Yesterday, I covered which Pokemon has the most Pokemon cards in the history of the TCG. Today, it's all about the Pokemon with the least amount of cards in the history of the TCG. If you missed the previous video, basically, I only count unique cards. If there's a reprint or alternate art, I don't count it. It has to be different in some way to be included. With that out of the way, let's begin. Starting with the most interesting Pokemon, we have Cadabra. If you search Cadabra on a Pokemon card database, there will be several results, but if you dig deeper, you'll notice that there hasn't been a new card in nearly 20 years. This all stems from the fact that magician Yuri Geller sued over Cadabra, believing it to be based on him. As a result, Cadabra has all but vanished and Abra has become collateral damage, not receiving a new card in a very long time as well. Alakazam, however, did see cards in the XY and Sword and Shield era, so it was spared, albeit only slightly. I'm leading off with Cadabra because, although it isn't the Pokemon with the least amount of cards of all time, it's gone nearly 2 decades without getting anything new. Now, you're probably thinking that there are some Pokemon with 0 cards, and they're probably from the most recent generation. Well, you're both right and wrong. Technically, Calyrex, Spectrier, and Glastrier do have several cards already in the form of Ice Rider and Shadow Rider Calyrex. However, there isn't a single card in the Pokemon TCG solely featuring those Pokemon. Since I combined Necrozma with Ultra Necrozma, Dawn Wings, and Duskmane Necrozma, things get a little murky in the official count, but depending on how you look at it, these 3 Pokemon, the focus of the Crown Tundra DLC released in October 2020, don't have their own cards yet. Additionally, there's Eternatus, the villain Pokemon in Sword and Shield. While we did receive Eternatus V and VMAX with Darkness Ablaze in August 2020, those are ultra rares. We don't actually have a single non-ultra rare card featuring Eternatus. Just another interesting tidbit I thought I'd highlight. Aside from the Crown Tundra dudes, every other Pokemon has at least 1 card featuring them on their own, so let's go generation by generation to see which Pokemon has the least number of cards from each region. I've already talked about how Cadabra suffered due to a lawsuit, and because of that, it has the least number of cards in Gen 1. Abra was collateral damage and it has the second least, but believe it or not, it's tied with another Pokemon for the second least. I'll give you 3 choices. It's either Hitmonlee, Kingler, or Pidgeotto. And the answer is Kingler. Despite being one of Ash's Pokemon and saying Cookie, Kingler only has 8 Pokemon cards. Following Abra and Kingler at 8, we have Pidgeotto, Krabby, and Hitmonlee at 9. Yes, 2 more of Ash's Pokemon are this low, and finally, Venonat and Venomoth are tied with 10 cards each. In terms of starters, Ivysaur draws the short straw at just 12 cards. Sticking with that line, while Bulbasaur does have a respectable 16 cards, we haven't received a new Bulbasaur card in nearly 3 years with the release of Detective Pikachu in 2019. Squirtle received 3 new cards in 2019 but nothing since, while Charmander appeared in Vivid Voltage at the end of 2020. A recurring theme you'll notice as the video goes along is that baby Pokemon are neglected in the TCG. Because of the evolution mechanic, baby Pokemon are largely ignored, as Pokemon like Electabuzz and Magmar are treated like basics, eliminating the need for Elekid and Magby. That's why Smoochum and Magby are tied for the least in Gen 2 with just 6 cards each. Elekid has 7, and it's joined by some non-baby Pokemon in Politoed, Sunkern, and Sunflora. Then at 8 we have Furret and Cleffa. Once again, baby Pokemon get stiffed. Generation 3 sees Azurill with the least number of cards at 4, with Wynaut right behind it, or I guess ahead of it? Behind it? At 5 cards. It's probably not surprising to have Clamperl and Huntail in the bottom 3 since you likely forgot they even exist, but there is something that might surprise you. Obviously, with Sword and Shield, Zigzagoon and Lanoon had a resurgence thanks to their regional forms in Obstagoon. That being said, if you remove the Galarian versions of those Pokemon, Zigzagoon and Lanoon only had 5 cards each, tying them with Wynaut. If you guessed that a baby Pokemon had the least number of cards in Gen 4, you'd be right. 6 times in a row. Mantike and Bonsly only have 1 Pokemon card, despite each of them existing for over 15 years. Badoo has just 2 cards, while Chingling, Happiny, and Mime Jr. all have 3. Despite being a baby Pokemon, I checked Bulbapedia, Riolu has 18 cards, putting it near the most populated Pokemon. So the Pokemon Company doesn't explicitly hate baby Pokemon, just most of them. In terms of non-baby Pokemon, Cranidos has the least at just 3. While Roark has a Cranidos and it's an overall great Pokemon, fossil Pokemon aren't considered basics in the TCG, so they have to evolve from a fossil, making them a hassle for the developers to print. It's why Shieldon and Rampardos only have 4 cards each. Don't ask me why Mothim, Finneon, and Lumineon only have 4 cards though, that's just mean in my opinion. Because there weren't any baby Pokemon to pick on in Gen 5, the Pokemon Company decided to come for fossil Pokemon. Tortuga, Arkin, and Archeops are all tied for the least at 3 cards each, then we have Caracosta, Sawsbuck, and Duosion at 4. The closer we get to present day, the less cards each generation has, so there are a lot of ties near the bottom. In fact, there's 14 Pokemon from Gen 5 with only 5 cards. What's surprising is that Servine, Serperior, Pignite, Duat, and Samurott are all on this list. Yes, Cryogonal has more cards than all of those starter evolutions for whatever reason. Gen 6 didn't introduce a lot of new Pokemon, but somehow fossil Pokemon still got screwed. Tyrunt and Amora are tied for the least with just 2 cards each. Their evolutions, Tyrantrum and Aurorus, only have 3 each, as does poor Quilladin. If you ever wondered which starter Pokemon evolution the Pokemon Company cares the least for, there's one candidate, but we actually have another in the next generation with fewer cards. If you think Quilladin deserves more love though, let everyone know in the comments. Gen 7 introduced us to Ultra Beasts, which I figured would have the least amount of cards, since some of them are super obscure and one of them's a creepy clown with an exploding head. But believe it or not, Comfey stands alone as the forgotten Pokemon with just 1 card in its entire life. Then we have a 5-way tie for second with 2 Ultra Beasts, Nihilego and Stakataka, 2 forgotten Pokemon in Komala and Minior, and the most neglected starter evolution, Brionne of Tarth, all of whom have 2 cards each. The rest of the bottom of the list is littered with Ultra Beasts, but the surprising entries are easily Dartrix and Primarina at 3 cards each. Starter evolutions just can't catch a break. And finally, the most recent generation, Gen 8. I've already talked about how Calyrex, Spectrier, and Glastrier technically have 0 cards each, but for who really is in last place, we have a 5-way tie with Pokemon who only have 1 card each. The obvious are Regieleki and Regidrago, since they were only introduced with the Crown Tundra DLC. Arctozolt and Dracovish are less obvious, but since they're fossils, who cares about them, right? But easily the most surprising Pokemon at the bottom with 1 card is Kubfu. While Urshifu has a whopping 8 cards, Kubfu has just 1, despite being heavily marketed for the Isle of Armor DLC. Explain that one to me. There are several Pokemon tied with just 2 cards each from Gen 8, but some of my personal favorites from Gen 8 are in there, including Carkol, Dottler, and Frostmoth. I'd like to chalk up this travesty to the newness of Sword and Shield, but when Morpeko has 9 cards already, I have to take it personally. And there you have it. As I said in my previous video, the math might not be perfect, so if you want to call me an idiot, feel free to do so in the comments. Otherwise, let me know which Pokemon you think deserves more cards. Personally, my vote goes to Comfey. 1 card? Come on, Pokemon Company.